This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Well, the United States has its 9/11 and the UK has 7/7. That's July 7th. That's 2005 was the date when they were attacked for the first time by Islamic terrorists in the worst attack since World War II on that country. 52 people died, plus the 4 bombers. It was a massive multi-cell terrorist attack that took place in 3 different places along the metro system in London. And then about an hour later, at about 9 a.m., the 4th bomb went off at the top, on the top of a double-decker bus. And the total death toll, like I say, was about 52 people, but almost 800 people were injured. Well, this is the 15-year anniversary of the attack, and I just wanted to show you an interview from one of the survivors of that attack. Check it out.
It does seem like yesterday. It's been 15 years on, but I recall those events as if it was yesterday, what I went through, the experience I went through, coming out of that alive. And it's hard. It's hard. Even though it has been those 15 years, it's still very hard to this day. It's affected me greatly. And my thoughts today go out with all the victims, all their families, survivors. And it's really actually just seeing those images flash up while speaking to you, it's really hard. I've spoken publicly a number of times, but watching those images just takes me back to what happened that particular morning. I remember being only 22 at the time. I was running late that morning. I was rushing. I remember getting onto the Piccadilly Tube at North London, the train, pulling into King's Cross, letting in passengers and letting them off. And literally 10 seconds into the tunnel towards Russell Square, I remember the bomb going off because it was the loudest bang I've ever heard. The train shook, the lights went out, dim emergency lightings came on, black smoke filling the carriages, people screaming. I have to highlight here, it's been a hard journey. It's been day and night. It's been... I've had my 2 children since then. I haven't had the time off with them. It's been constant. I've traveled the length and breadth of UK working with Muslim women through my Web Guardians program, educating them to protect their kids from online extremism and ultimately protect society. I've engaged with mums who've talked to me about their sons going to Syria, joining ISIS. I've engaged with mums who've spoken to me about their concerns. And it's been a hard journey, but I know that actually I have made that difference working with these mothers and working with these women, because they've actually said to me firsthand, it's as if it's been a wake-up call for us to do something about this issue.
So when it comes to these kinds of terror attacks on the United States, one thing that we're seeing this year is a dramatic reduction of actual jihadist terror attacks, that is religiously motivated terror attacks happening in the United States. And that's probably because travel is so much restricted. People are restricted in their homes. They're not gathering together in large crowds. And so there is not the opportunity as much, although we have seen a rash of jihadi attacks taking place against U.S. military bases this year, but the total numbers are down significantly. Before the 2020, we saw the number of attacks actually rising in 2017, 2018, and 2019 of those kinds of religiously motivated attacks. To make up for it in 2020, though, what we're seeing is an increase in other kinds of terrorist events. All you have to do is turn on the news and you can see Black Lives Matter protests turning to riots, Antifa riots. If you don't want to call those terrorism, I don't know what you want to call them. I don't know what you should call them, because the Antifa especially, and in many cases Black Lives Matter, is out specifically to foment terror across the United States. They want to make you afraid in your bed. That's exactly what they want to do. And they know they're not going to knock down the democratic system or the Republican government that we have in place, but they want to force change by scaring you into submission. And unfortunately, it's working in many places around the country as we see city leaders kowtow to Antifa and kowtow to Black Lives Matter and allow them space to destroy. That's what we've seen across the country in places like Baltimore and Washington, D.C. and New York City and Detroit and in Seattle, of course. Literally hundreds of cities, even small towns across the country. So the only thing that really bothers me about the reporting on this is that a lot of it gets mischaracterized. They like to lump a lot of things into what they call right-wing extremist violence. Now, let me give you an example. A lot of the violence we've seen from the incel movement, that's the involuntary celibate movement. These are these guys that spend all their time in their mother's basement playing video games, and they don't have any friends, they don't have any girlfriends, and they start to get angry because of that. They start to resent the world and think that the world needs to pay because they can't get a girlfriend. And this is a bigger problem than people realize. If you've been watching the podcast, you've seen some of the reporting I've done about the incel movement. But the FBI and many of the mainstream media lump the incel movement into extremist right-wing violence, when in reality, these kinds of people, the people who don't have a job, live in their mom's basement, play video games all day, don't have any friends, get angry at the world, that to me describes more like Antifa than like white supremacists. But yet they get lumped in as right-wing extremists. There's a lot of other examples like that where somebody just gets angry about what's going on and they get called a right-wing extremist. They get angry at people tearing down these statues, and they go and they try to put a stop to it. They try to stand guard in front of some of these statues, like we've seen in Arizona and New Mexico, where they were pulling down a statue in New Mexico recently of a conquistador, and some guys showed up and they were armed and they wanted to try to guard that statue. But when they realized they were vastly outnumbered, they just tried to break contact and leave. When that happened, these Antifa guys beat one of these guys with a skateboard and knocked him down, and then pulled out a knife and said, "I'm going to kill you with this knife." So the guy pulled out his pistol and shot the guy. This is being characterized as a right-wing extremist attack. These guys are not right-wing extremists. They are sick and tired. They're fed up with the left being allowed free rein to loot and destroy across this country. And they're being called the Boogaloo movement or something like that. Look, are there right-wing extremists in the United States? Yes. Are there white supremacists in the United States? Yes. They are an extremely small number of people. The people that we see that are going out armed and standing guard, or going out armed to protest the lockdowns, the quarantines, and that sort of thing, they're by and large extremely peaceful, extremely polite. They're not being dangerous. They're not calling people out. Now, to contrast that, what we've seen in just recent days was hundreds of people from the left, I would say, Black Lives Matter movement, who call themselves NFAC. That's the Not Effing Around Company or something like that. And that is, they took over Stone Mountain, Georgia, and they had literally hundreds of armed people. Now, do I have a problem with people coming out and protesting and carrying their long guns in protest? No, no problem at all. Other people do it all the time. I don't have a problem when they do it in Michigan to show their displeasure with the quarantine. And I don't have a problem with a bunch of black people getting together and marching, carrying their weapons either. What I do have a problem with is this. Check it out.
Threat, counter threat. Because threats don't mean to us. Y'all been threatening us since Birmingham. I ain't seen when it's July the 4th. And all you scary ass Negroes that passed around. Look at what the you did. You made blacks come out. I don't see no white militia. So to the boogie boys, the 3%ers, and all the rest of you scared ass rednecks, we here. Where the you at? We in your house. Let's go. NFAC, mother.
So I don't think this is an apples to apples comparison. You can't compare the people who go out and peacefully protest at the State House wearing their weapons and body armor in Michigan, where there is no inflammatory language, there's no threats made or anything like that. You can't compare that to these people from the NFAC who are literally calling out the 3%ers, literally calling out the white supremacists, and literally calling out the militias around the country, and basically calling out white people and saying that they are going to take over and that they want Texas as an ethnocentric state. They want Texas as their own country.
It is very simple. We file a Declaration of Liberation declaring every African-American descendant of slavery a political prisoner here in the United States and that was affected by the Portuguese slave trade. And then after that, the United States has a choice. Either A, carve us a piece of land out here, we'll take Texas and let us do our own thing, or don't stop us when we exodus out of here and go somewhere where they will give us our own land to build our own nation.
What is your name and what is the...
I'm the official Grandmaster Jay. I created the NFAC.
Good luck with that. So this is going to be really interesting, but I think we need to keep following this. And the bottom line is that terrorists are still in our midst and they still want to hurt you. And so it's important for you to be prepared, but it's also important for you to be trusting and be smart and not live in fear. How do we do that? Well, I can tell you how I do that. I live by faith and not by sight. And I try to be smart. God gave me a brain for a reason. I try to use it. I try to stay away from large crowds of people. I'm not going to live in a big city. If you do live in a big city, I think the best thing you could do right now would be to vote with your feet and start thinking about getting out of there and moving out into the country. We're seeing literally millions of people considering that right now, and for good reason. All right, that's all we've got for the podcast today. Thanks for watching. I'm Chuck Holton. We'll see you later.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.